that were used only in the high summer, and which it was the custom to leave locked up and deserted through all the winter and spring, and up to the middle of June. The buildings were of a soft toned gray stone, buried in rich green grass, shadowed by chestnut trees, and lit by an extraordinary blaze of yellow broom. Never had the king seen broom so glorious. He shouted at the light of it, for it seemed to give out more sunlight even than it received. He sat down impulsively on a lichenous stone, tugged out his bread and cheese, and bade Firmin thrust the beer into the shaded weeds to cool. "The things people miss, Firmin," he said, "who go up into the air in ships." Firmin looked around him with an ungenial eye. "You see it at its best, sir," he said, "before the peasants come here again and make it filthy." "It would be beautiful anyhow," said the king. "Superficially, sir," said Firmin, "but it stands for a social order that is fast vanishing away. Indeed, judging by the grass between the stones and in the huts, I am inclined to doubt if it is in use even now." "I suppose," said the king, "that they would come up immediately the hay on this flower meadow is cut. It would be those slow, creamy colored beasts, I expect, one sees on the roads below, and swarthy girls with red handkerchiefs over their black hair. It is wonderful to think how long that beautiful old life lasted. In the Roman times and long ages before ever the rumor of the Romans had come into these parts, men drove their cattle up into the places, as the summer came on. How haunted is this place! There have been quarrels here, hopes, children have played here and lived to be old cronies and old gaffers, and died, and so it has gone on for thousands of lives. Lovers, innumerable lovers, have caressed amidst this golden broom." He meditated over a busy mouthful of bread and cheese. "We ought to have brought a tankard for that beer," he said. Firmin produced a folding aluminum cup, and the king was pleased to drink. "I wish, sir," said Firmin suddenly, "I could induce you at least to delay your decision." "It's no good talking, Firmin," said the king. "My mind's as clear as daylight." "Sire," protested Firmin, with his voice full of bread and cheese and genuine emotion, "have you no respect for your kingship?" The king paused before he answered with unwonted gravity. "It's just because I have, Firmin, that I won't be a puppet in this game of international politics." He regarded his companion for a moment and then remarked, "Kingship! What do you know of kingship, Firmin?" "Yes," cried the king to his astonished counselor, "for the first time in my life I am going to be a king. I am going to lead, and lead by my own authority. For a dozen generations my family has been a set of dummies in the hands of their advisers. Advisers! Now I am going to be a real king, and I am going to abolish, dispose of, finish the crown to which I have been a slave. But what a world of paralyzing shams this roaring stuff has ended! The rigid old world is in the melting pot again, and I, who seem to be no more than the stuffing inside a regal robe, I am a king among kings. I have to play my part at the head of things, and put an end to blood and fire and idiot disorder." "But, sir," protested Firmin, "this man Leblanc is right. The whole world has got to be a republic, one and indivisible. You know that, and my duty is to make that easy. A king should lead his people. You want me to stick on their backs like some old man of the sea. Today must be a sacrament of kings. Our trust for mankind is done with and ended. We must part our robes among them. We must part our kingship among them, and say to them all, now the king in everyone must rule the world. Have you no sense of the magnificence of this occasion? You want me, Firmin, you want me to go up there and haggle like a damned little solicitor for some price, some compensation, some qualification?" Firmin shrugged his shoulders, and assumed an expression of despair. Meanwhile he conveyed, "One must eat." For a time neither spoke, and the king ate and turned over in his mind the phrases of speech he intended to make to the conference. By virtue of the antiquity of his crown, he was to preside, and he intended to make his presidency memorable. Reassured of his eloquence, he considered the despondent and sulky Firmin for a space. "Firmin," he said, "you have idealed kingship." "It has been my dream, sir," said Firmin sorrowfully, "to serve." "At the levers, Firmin," said the king. "You are pleased to be unjust," said Firmin, deeply hurt. "I am pleased to be getting out of it," said the king. "Oh, Firmin," he went on, "have you no thought for me? Will you never realize that I am not only flesh and blood, but imagination, with its rights? I am a king in revolt against that fetter they put upon my head. I am a king awake. My reverend grandparents never in all their august lives had a waking moment. They loved the job that you, your advisers, gave them. They never had a doubt of it. It was like giving a doll to a woman who ought to have a child. They delighted in processions and opening things and being read addresses too, and visiting triplets and nonagenarians and all that sort of thing. Incredibly. They used to keep albums of cuttings from all the illustrated papers showing them at it, and if the press cutting partials grew thin, they were worried. It was all that ever worried them. But there is something atavistic in me. I hark back to unconstitutional monarchs. They christened me too retrogressively, I think. I wanted to get things done. I was bored. I might have fallen into vice. Most intelligent and energetic princes do. But the palace precautions were unusually thorough. I was brought up in the purest court the world has ever seen, alertly pure. So I read books, Firmin, and went about asking questions. The thing was bound to happen to one of us sooner or later, perhaps two. Very likely I'm not vicious. I don't think I am. He reflected. "No," he said. Firmin cleared his throat. "I don't think you are, sir," he said. "You prefer—" He stopped short. He had been going to say talking. He substituted ideas. "That world of royalty," the king went on. "In a little while no one will understand it any more. It will become a riddle. Among other things, it was a world of perpetual best clothes. Everything was in its best clothes for us, and usually wearing bunting, with a cinema watching to see we took it properly. If you are a king, Firmin, and you go and look at a regiment, it instantly stops whenever it is doing, changes into full uniform and presents arms. When my august parents went in a train, the coal in the tender used to be whitened. It did, Firmin, and if coal had been white instead of black, I have no doubt the authorities would have blackened it. That was the spirit of our treatment. People were always walking about with their faces to us. One never saw anything in profile. One got an impression of a world that was insanely focused on ourselves. And when I began to poke my little questions into the Lord Chancellor and the Archbishop and all the rest of them about what I should see if people turned round, the general effect I produced was that I wasn't by any means displaying the royal tact they had expected of me." He meditated for a time. "And yet, you know, there is something in the kingship, Firmin. It stiffened up my august little grandfather. It gave my grandmother a kind of awkward dignity even when she was cross, and she was very often